one of the things I really push back on is this narrative that everybody needs to upskill all the time. Let's take a step back and ask why we're asking this question, right? And we're asking this question because we're saying that the amount of time people spend on everything else in their lives is not enough.
Welcome back to Wise and Shy. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut.
And I'm Dawn, Chief Budget Babe. Today we have a topic that probably hasn't been addressed.
It's the talk of the town. I think a lot of people, I know on LinkedIn I see this status, career break. Every Tom, Dick, Harry also on a career break.
Exactly. But people don't really talk about the nuances of it. So that's what we're going to cover today on what constitutes a career break. How can you come back stronger after a career break? And should you even take it in the first place? Or will your boss be judging you for it?
Exactly. Or why do you even begin a career break, right? But the premise of what we're trying to cover today essentially is it that easy to go on a break and then bounce back? All right. So I think that's the main idea that we want to cover, because there's a lot of assumptions, right? Everybody think like, just go on a break long, then we'll come back. It's actually maybe not so simple. So that's the main idea we want to talk about today.
And to help us address this topic, we have an expert who's going to share what you should consider and the actionable steps that you need to think about and implement before or after you come back from that break. So Nurul, could you introduce yourself to our audiences, let them know what you do?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nurul. I'm the founder of the Codette Project, which is trying to get more minority and Muslim women into tech. And I'm also the founder of my own career consultancy. You can find us at nuruljihadah.com. And I specialize really in women and people who have decided that they want to figure out what steps to take, especially if people are anxious or if they're on a break or they're confused about what's next. So I focus on actionable, real steps to get people to where they want to be.
Not follow your passion.
No, I hate those three words. I hate follow your passion. What does that mean? And that's driven by data. So a lot of data shows that when you ask people what they're passionate about, it's things like dance, it's things like reading, it's hobbies really. So that's what you love. But if you have the intersection of that with monetization, is that monetizable? That's very low. And what we want to make sure people know is that it's okay to say you want to earn money. It's
You're on the right show.
Need.
You're on the right show. Yes. Okay.
So I think that aligns,
So for your line, right, what is the most common question regarding career breaks that you usually get from your client?
What is a career break? In the definition of career breaks.
Okay, so firstly, those are two different questions. So I will address them. So first, what is a career break? It's important for people to understand that there's forced and unforced career breaks. Some people go on a career break because they have no choice. They've been laid off. Or someone is like, we're closing at the end of the month. So that's an enforced career break. You have no choice. You don't have any other options. You don't have anything planned.
This one.
Yes.
You cannot 100%. Baby. Is that an enforced career break?
It's kind of planned, hopefully. But for example, if you have a child that's ill, that might be unplanned. If you have complications in your pregnancy, that might be an unplanned career break. There's also planned career breaks where people are like, if I achieve this, this, and this, or I'm really tired, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm going to go on a career break. So these are all the different aspects and what I've heard people say as to why they're going on a career break. But my approach and my advice for a lot of these different things is different. If it's health related, one thing that's key is that you have to make sure you have the resources so that you can go on a break and heal. One of the other things is that you want to make sure that when you are on a break and you're healing, you're really healing. Especially if you know it's just a break, if you're going to go come back. If it's unplanned, you got laid off, that's very different. Because some people are like, I got laid off yesterday, I want to go on my job search today. That's not a break. That's just you doing full-time job search. And these are two very different things.
Okay, fair. So then what are the common things that people go on a break for if that's the case? Based on the people that you've worked with, since you've kind of like set the line, right? So what are more common these days in terms of what's happening out there?
Right now it's layoffs, especially the tech layoffs. While a lot of people knew that it was coming, it's still always a shock. And I think what's also been a shock for a lot of people is how long it takes to actually get a job that they want. So a lot of people assume if you get laid off and it's, a good job, a good company, good salary, you're going to find another job very easily. But that's not true. It's taking most people at least 6 months. And a lot of people are not prepared for that.
Not prepared in a sense, financially not prepared.
Financially, for sure, that's one aspect. And I think also emotionally not prepared. It's hard to go out for 6 months and get rejection after rejection and then be like, actually, it's okay. I'm going to continue. That's very, very difficult.
Yeah, usually after a while, their reel gets broken because of the repeated rejections.
Fair.
It's even harder for them to go into the next interview with that confidence that they first had in the first month, maybe.
Yeah. But to be fair, that scenario, you don't really have a lot of choice, right?
Yeah.
Because you kena, right? Like it's not part of your plan. You have no strategy around this. You kind of scramble around and you figure what's... You don't have a pattern, right? You don't have a choice around this, right? Pretty much that's the idea. Right, and then you try to figure it out. Best is you already have some plan previously. Like you have accumulated some money, you have some sort of idea what you're trying to do. Then I think that's okay.
Let's talk about why it's so long in the first place. So Nurul, you're telling us that people think it's 3 months, but it's 6 months. What are the reasons that lead to this lengthening of time?
There are multiple reasons. I think one of the key reasons is that people assume, especially if they've been out of the job hunt for a long time, that it's just going to be one application, one interview, and that's it. But it's multiple rounds of interviews, multiple rounds of, you might have one application, but you're going to have a test after that. You're going to have people checking all the different aspects of the job. So some companies have maybe up to 6 to 7 rounds, and you have to think about that and you have to budget that in your job search. And that's assuming you get in at the first stage. When you're applying, a company might not get back to you until 3 to 4 months after. I've heard someone that got called back after 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
After the first round or the first application, 6 months later, then get the call for the next stage.
Oh no, so this was more complicated. So they'd been through a couple of rounds and then it kind of had paused. Yeah, they were shelved. And then 6 months after, they were like, do you want...
I can tell you what happened.
Yeah. Do you want this job?
They didn't pass the round, right? Then the rest moved along. Then probably along the way, the final candidate that you want rejected the offer. Went somewhere else. You went back to the garage to find all the people that you shelved, try to bring them back again.
It could also be that departments are just getting reshuffled. People are moving.
Yeah.
And then a lot of these things you won't know. So like rejection is rejection, but if you don't get rejection, you might be on hold, but you might be on hold indefinitely. And you won't know.
That essentially the whole thing is a little bit more on the unplanned side of things, right? Which unplanned is unplanned now, right? You don't have a plan, then that's that, right? But I'm actually personally more interested in the planned one because I see a lot of our listeners and the people around us, right? They're high flyers, right? They do well in their career. They are very experienced with these things, but they want to take a break. They want to go on a planned career break, right? And sometimes there are some assumptions, like what you've established, like, or maybe they underestimate how fast they can turn around. They underestimate, like, you're a high flyer, so what? Doesn't mean that you can definitely come back, once you're done on the career break. So some of those things, right? In a planned career break, how would you kind of advise people to think about? What is the framework?
I'm very big on goals and I'm very big on measurable goals. So I would say that before you go on a career break, one, create a decision matrix or like figure out actually why is it you want to go on a career break and will it satisfy what you're actually going on a break for? And the reason why I say that is that one of the mistakes people make is that people decide they want to go on a career break and they do a master's, but they don't know why they're doing the master's and they don't enjoy the master's. So you've basically paid like $50,000 to $100,000 for something you don't even want. Like keep that money and just rest at home. Like it's okay. So goal setting, I think would be really important for people to do at least 1 to 2 months before they go on a career break. And then on their career break to actually see, do those goals align with what they're doing? And what can they do during that time to make sure that it matches what they want out of their lives? Like the average career is at least 40 years long. Even if you take a break for 1 year or 2 years, that's like 39, 38 years. You have a long time. But whatever it is that you do during that time, you got to make sure that it doesn't become a downstream problem for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because proponents of career break would say this, right? 40 years, you can take a year off. No problem, right? But the reality is it's not always that clean, right? Like, which is what you've talked about, like downstream, right? But how does that kind of look like from an executional standpoint? Yeah.
Also for many people, the question around like, okay, I want or I need a career break, maybe for my mental sanity, and I want to go off. But what's going to happen to my role? I want to come back. Will it even be there though? Because the business can't just let that run without me for a year while I go and
so that's
do
the
my
that's
stuff,
the inherent
right?
tussle, right? Where deep down there's some place that says that you need a break. For whatever reason, it can be family, it can be your health, whatever. Okay, whatever reason, you need a break. Okay, so there's one factor that's pulling you or pushing you. Okay, and then on the other end, there's the other factor of like, can you even come back? Once you're out of it, right? Maybe now the market's not so good and all that jazz, right? So how do you kind of work through that?
Well, the first part, I think, is for people to step back and think about employers as not being benevolent. Like, they're not going to take care of you. They don't care. You are fundamentally replaceable. And once you accept that, you also accept things like you're not at fault for being stressed about work if you're not being given the resources to have the mental health, the physical health, the sanity to do your job. That is an institutional problem. That is not your fault. What you have responsibility for and what you have control over is how you are going to plan your own career. And that can be different things. So that can be looking at, in this job, what are the skill sets that I've learned? What are the things that I've enjoyed? And what am I good at? How do I bring that and negotiate for a higher value of my time so that I feel like it's worth me taking a step back and leaving this job? The other aspect of this is that when we look at people who are in jobs, who want to continue working, but just don't want to work in that job, right?
And maybe it's not about a career break. It's just a break
quit
from
your
this
job.
this one.
But quit your job with a plan. And this is what people have got to do. Like, I think the job search is forever. I think when you're in your job, give yourself maybe 3 months, 6 months, but start applying for your next job. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're applying for a job because you hate it. Apply for a job and leave while it's still okay, while it's still good. Like, the mistake people make is thinking, A, your employer is going to take care of you forever. Never going to happen. And B, that you will always be happy in your job. Plan ahead. Plan for what you know is coming, which is when you want to leave, because that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, your career is your biggest investment. I mean, some people think like that, right? And the reality is, just a fun fact, I don't know if a lot of people realize, but there are a lot of career shows out there, but they are never big. Okay, so they're like decent size, but they are never like blockbusters. What I've learned from some of these people that are producing career related shows is there is a graduation period. Like, people only listen to it when they need it. And then once they're in a career, right, then they fall off. And then when problems happen, then they come back and listen to career shows. Right? So in other words, you're not planning for a prolonged period, right? You just, it's a as and when band-aid type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
People think about career advice as like going to the doctor when you're sick. But I think looking at your career and working on your career is like exercise. You have to do it every day. If not, it doesn't make sense.
So like what should people do every day in that sense?
Well, okay, every day might be a bit of a...
I mean, like to build a successful career.
What I think people have to do regularly, whether it's weekly, monthly, or every half a year, is 1, review your performance and the skills that you've learned. 2, update your networking list. Like, who are you reaching out to or connected to that is able to give you a perspective, not just on your role in your industry, but overall, like, where are the trends? Where could you go? And I think another aspect of that is, who are the people that you trust to give you good advice? And that doesn't necessarily have to be people within your industry or who are working. It's people that can tell you, look, your boss doesn't value you. You've not had a promotion in 2 years. You might not be unhappy, but you have to consider other situations. Can you do better? So those are some components. I think I would recommend people apply to a job after 6 months, and also every year, even if you're happy in your job, just to know, are you getting paid fairly? Is there a better offer out there? Be in practice so that when you need those skills, it's not an emergency situation.
Actually, I got a question. I know of people who do this very often, and they also tell me like, hey, Dawn, you should do this because you keep yourself relevant, you know what the market is paying you, you get to network at the same time. But then my question is always like, it's very hard for me to go and take leave to attend these interviews when I have already limited leave as it is, and we need to take care of the kids. We want to go overseas
specifically
also,
for
right?
you got a lot of things. So,
I know,
you got your own
so I
problems.
guess like the question, how to balance? Because it's not like, hey boss, I'm going to take this PM off. Why? I want to go interview at your competitor.
Well, I feel like that's thinking too far. Because before you get to that stage, you want to make sure that, is your CV okay? will you get called to interview? Is then the most important question. And then once you get the interview, my recommendation for people is to do it to see, are you even going to pass? And even if you decide not to go for the interview, that's okay. At least, you've done all these things, you've gotten this far. That's okay. Maybe next year you want to try again, you want to go for an interview, then that's fine. But if you don't try at all, you don't know. So you're in a bit of it's like a Schrodinger's cat situation. Can you or can't you? Like, is the cat alive or not? You don't know. And I think that people have to understand that you need to answer that question.
So I also want to ask about how do you then validate some of this information, right? Because like we've established that there are some factors that are kind of like you yourself, right? You want to go somewhere else, you want to do something else, you have kind of already done it. And then there are a big pool of factors, or at least how a lot of people look at it is your boss don't treasure you, there's no future here, there's no career progression, right? And a lot of times when a third party comes in to share their view, there's a good chance that they're projecting their perspective on the situation, right? So how should someone then kind of go about validating, whether is it an accurate situation, right? Whether is it a situation where there's really no career progression here, or, your boss really don't care about you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Quantitative and qualitative data both play a role. So qualitative is obviously like talking to people, figuring out like what are people saying. When you look at progression within a company, is there someone in the company whose career you wouldn't mind having? Is there someone in a role which you think you can go into? So looking at that, I think when you look at quantitative data and then you're looking overall at the industry, is it growing? You're looking at your company. What is your annual report like? What are you earning this quarter versus next quarter? What do you see? What's management like? So you have your own feelings and you should know those things, but there's always more data to be had. So one of the issues is also that people don't have enough data. They don't know. They're not speaking to people. They're not looking at trends. They're not answering any of these questions. They only have their own experience. And often people come to me when they're already upset. So it's a very urgent feeling that they have, like they really want to fix this. So for me, it's about gaining more data, talking to people, talking to more people. So there's different quality third-party interactions. You want to go for high-quality third-party.
How do you seek? What type of data will you seek? I mean, okay, I get it. If you work for some of the big banks or big companies, right? Every quarter they will have announcement, right? So, breakout earnings. Then you look at your pay better break out also, right? but some of the smaller companies, maybe not say very small, but they don't have full information. So what do you think people should look out for?
If you're selling books in a bookstore, you still have competitors. You might know those competitors. You might know people that work for them. So just go and have tea with somebody and be like, actually, how much do you earn? I think culturally, perhaps we don't talk honestly about how much people are earning and what are the benefits. Like maybe you earn the same amount, but someone's got 21 days and some of leave and someone's got like 7 days of leave. So that's a huge difference. You want to know, this is all data that you won't know unless you talk to that person. Even if you're from a small company, go ahead and find someone, talk to them. It doesn't have to be going for like a networking session with like 2,000 people and then talking to like 300 of them. It's okay. Like take it one step at a time, but get the information you need through talking to people and knowing the questions to ask.
So the question to ask is, how much are you paid?
I think in this situation,
yes. The question asks how much you pay, how much leave you have, right? It's like, are there other things that you would advise people to ask?
Do you like your boss? What's the management style? Do you feel like you're being treated fairly? What kinds of things have happened in the last 3 months, 6 months since we've joined? One question that I find is quite useful is asking, what was your onboarding process like? Or what was your first 3 months like in the company? Because that can often give you a snapshot on, is it organized? Do they have an onboarding process? What are people like? Yeah.
How does that look like then? In the sense of like a good onboarding process? Just curious.
Well, no matter what size of a company, you should have a plan. I think you should have a plan. It should be systematic and there should be an understanding that for anyone and any role at any level, the first 3 months should be learning. So if the first 3 months is focused on meeting a random KPI that you didn't know about until you join, then maybe you want to step back and see, actually, does this reflect a larger problem in terms of attitude? Does this reflect a larger problem in terms of I'm never going to be able to learn because I'm always rushing to execute? So these are questions to ask.
Yeah, my company has pretty good onboarding processes, I think. So when
Employer branding exercise. Selling for your company.
No, I mean when anyone and even myself when we were onboarded, right, the process is quite straightforward. After you get the offer, then you go through a background check, and then and in the interview process we would have met our direct manager. Before we actually get in. Okay, so after the offer goes to us, we accept, we go through the background check. Once your background check clears in time, you join on your stipulated first day. If it doesn't clear in time, you join with some probation. So it's like if anything comes out later, we'll have that chat, but you can join first. And usually, it depends on the department, but for my role specifically, which is client facing, we have one entire month of learning. So it's like you get first day typically is go and read on the organizational policies. This is like what the HR policies are like. And then after that, day 2 usually is like meet your teammates and then get to know your department line of work. And then you'll be given all the different booklets and, onboarding stuff to read about. And then after that, mine's a bit different because I have clients facing, right? So then we would also get access to history. Yeah. And then there will be shadowing for people who are new, who need to learn about the processes. So for my case, we had a buddy. Later on, I was a buddy to the next new person who joined the team. And I thought that was actually very structured because I've been in organizations where it's literally you get thrown into the job. You don't know what you don't know. And they just within 2 days, they just tell you some stuff and everything else you learn on the way. And I find that really messy.
Yeah, that's the type of job that you will go for a career break. Right? Essentially. Okay. So now that we've established that, okay, people go for a planned career break, you want to kind of make sure that you know what you want to achieve during this period. And I think, by the way, I think Chris, which is doing some good stuff for us, he has a very planned career break.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's learning new things, every other meeting that I have with him. Also, I tried this software. Oh, I learned this thing. And let me show you how GPT can help me solve my job, right? It's like all these stuff. Like, oh my God, this guy is really doing a lot. And by the way, he runs some of our content stuff, right? So that is great. But I don't think everybody does it this way. Some people are a little bit more exploratory going out there, right? So, but anyway, based on your thought process, right? Then what is the next step?
What is the next step?
Yeah, after I have kind of cleared up, okay, so this is why
they've decided to go on a break. They have come up with their goals and what they want to achieve during this period. What do they then do next?
Then enjoy a career break. Enjoy it. And then what I would also say is that for any career break, you should have check-ins within a specific time period. If you already know, okay, I'm going to go on a career break for 1 year, then maybe every quarter or every month. If you want to do it every 6 months, if you want a career break for about 6 months, then checking in every 2 weeks to a month makes sense. And then just see, are you aligned? And then before you decide to exit your career break, look at what is your exit strategy. How are you going to spend that time? Because what that means is also during that first period, if all you want to do is absolutely nothing and catch up on all the Netflix you have not watched for the last 3 years, that's also okay. Because you know when you have to stop watching Netflix.
So your check-in plan is how many dramas do you finish in a month?
I have a few friends who are planning that. I was
unlimited Netflix for the first 2 months.
Exactly. I was like, so what's your plan? Like, what plan? No plan. Plan is to relax, right? So okay.
Yeah, which is great. I think that's also valid. I think in terms of rest, it's also important for us to recognize that good work requires good rest. And for a lot of people, the burnout that's happening and the career breaks that are happening right now, we can't dissociate this with the amount of stress people were under during COVID. COVID was really recent. So many people were looking at not just career impacts, but family impacts. People were ill. People passed away. People really had so much going on emotionally. I think we are still in a state where we're working through some of these things. We're looking at some of the long-term impacts. And that is something we need to recognize. In order for us to get to where we want to be, sometimes we just need a season to rest. And that's very fair.
So what is then a good rest in that sense?
I have so many thoughts on this.
Yeah. Tell me, what is a good? Because I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that I think a lot of people are just unraveling, post-COVID, right? There's a lot of problems there, but how do you define a good rest? What is?
So some research has talked about how there's 7 different kinds of rest. You need to make sure that, all the 7 different kinds are kinds that you have, you've been doing. Basic one, sleep. I think what we also tend not to recognize in Singapore is that social media, even if you use it in a very limited basis, can be extremely exhausting. In terms of input, visual input, audio input, we're surrounded by a lot of auditory pollution, a lot of light pollution, a lot of noise pollution. And what I'm seeing from people who have made a conscious effort to step away from that and get rest that is less, that is less input basically, is that they feel so refreshed by that. Because work is constant input, constant emails, constant WhatsApp, constant messages, just to step away from input and figure out what is output, what is rest. I think that's very, very healthy and very necessary.
I did a whole I think 1-2 weeks of no phones, right? And it's quite good. After that, I feel like my senses were a lot sharper, right? I'm a little bit more aware of things around, not as fidgety, right? So there are good benefits to this, lah. Yeah, but I don't think everybody can do it. But anyway, that's a different discussion. How do you rest? You got so many things.
Do you rest?
Yeah, you got so many things going. You are one of the people that I think got too many things going on. How do you? So sleep.
Sleep, yeah.
Okay.
Sleep and Netflix.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but mostly sleep.
That's why you're very unhappy when people say must sacrifice the 1 hour Korean drama time to upskill yourself.
Exactly.
So this is my rest time, right? Yeah. It's a very sacred thing to you, right? In that sense. Okay.
I would say that actually, honestly, if those are your two options, then there's something wrong with this narrative, because you should have enough time for rest and learning. You should have enough time for Netflix and upskilling.
But is it true objectively? From a practical perspective, is it true that you should have enough time? Because girl has 2 kids, then she got a full-time job, very intense. She has a very successful, influencer vertical, so that's why
I don't think it's a fair question for her or for someone in a similar situation, and especially not for mothers. And one of the things I really push back on is this narrative that everybody needs to upskill all the time. Let's take a step back and ask why we're asking this question, right? And we're asking this question because we're saying that the amount of time people spend on everything else on their lives is not enough. And we ask this question of even people, for example, if you're a home-based baker, is not enough. You make the best cake, the best nasi lemak, whatever in the world, not enough. Please go and learn digital marketing. There's a problem there, which assumes that the limitation to her business is herself. But if we look at resourcing and the amount of resources we should and can provide women or people with businesses, we can look at it from a very different perspective and say, actually, how do we redistribute resources and redistribute a lot of the support that they need so that they can focus on what they do best and get support for things like digital marketing elsewhere? These are questions we need to ask. It's not just everybody upskill all the time. And I'm of the generation, right, where, and this will age me, I know, but I'm of the generation where there was a very strong push to biomedical.
Oh, I know which generation. Oh, yes.
So there was a very strong push to biomedical. So in JC, we didn't have a lot of people.
Aviation, chemical engineering.
Yes,
I got that period,
but
right?
especially biomedical.
Yeah.
And in this, so in JC, we only had 2 classes that were doing computer science. And that obviously was not beneficial to us as a nation in the long run. But the push was really strong. So the biomedical was 13 classes, right? I'm an art student, so I'm not involved in this at all. But it was interesting for me to see, because this meant that the limitation in thought process that this is all you need to do, this is all you need to do, this is all you need to do, prevented people from actually doing what would benefit them in the long run for their career. So we need to know and understand that the careers which will pay the way tech is paying now, we don't even know what that is yet. It could be agriculture. It could be butterfly farming. It could be something we don't know, right?
That'd be quite cool. Butterfly farming.
That could be great, but we don't know. So how do we fill that gap between what we know and what we don't know? Is make sure that we are in a position where we do the 2 sides of that research, the quantitative and the qualitative. No, ask the questions, make sure you're talking to people, and make sure that you are consistently asking questions to grow. And that goes back to rest. Don't just pursue skills and upskilling for no reason. Don't chase that. Chase the question of actually what is possible.
So fundamentally, back to her case, right? It's not possible. in
Yeah,
that
and don't
sense.
do it.
Okay.
Then is it not more beneficial for her
validated.
to rest?
That's why I'm hiring resources, right?
Yeah, I get it.
And like
I
you
get it.
have children. Like I think people don't understand how resource intensive like having a child is.
Think about that before you have a kid.
No, really, I think that's true. It's incredibly resource intensive, and there is no amount of money that can pay you for that time. Because the amount of care that you have for your child, the amount of worry, the amount of long-term planning, that's immense. And that's also something that in a lot of ways is not valued in a monetary sense. So we have to ask those questions. Yeah.
For a lot of parents, when there's free time, it's easy for us to decide, oh, I have 1 hour free today. I'm going to spend it with my kid. We don't consciously think of, I'm going to spend it and learn AI so I can know how to prompt ChatGPT better, right? It's like my kid is there. It's a relationship that I'm building. I want to do that. Yeah. So it's hard to actually find that much rest because typically there's so many things ongoing at once.
Yeah, fair.
When you free up something here, you tend to put it in the other things that are still continuing. And there's very little space for something else to come in unless they go on that planned career break.
Yeah, but the interesting part is when you go on a career break, right, you suddenly have a lot of space. And actually a lot of people struggle with that big influx of a lot of space. You know what I mean? Because now you got a lot of time.
I think
What you
that
gonna
happens
do?
to those who don't plan. Because I went on my career break, I didn't have a lot of time.
Really?
Yeah, I did a lot of
She had a
things.
plan.
Share a
Right?
bit more.
I did a lot of things during I was on a 9-month career break. A lot of it was taking care of my kid because he had a surgery. So that took up like probably 40 to 50% of the time. And then I was also working on my content at the same time. I felt like I want to do more organic posts. Suddenly I feel like I write too much for clients. I want back myself. So I was doing a lot more organic stuff during that
I know.
period.
She rejects some of the client.
I rejected a
I was
lot
like,
during that
why
period.
you don't
I
need
was
some
like,
kind of sponsor? Cannot.
Yeah.
This one I must write on my own. If not,
Correct.
sponsor will disturb what I want, right?
Exactly, right. So I was doing that. And because I had a plan, then I had like more Netflix than usual in that period. So yeah, my time passed by really quickly. After that, when I went back to work, I was like, oh, and I exercise. Yeah, right. So I was doing so many things. Where got big space of time? I think that happens to people who don't plan it out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Because if you go on a
had
planned career break.
So you had no struggle with the sudden influx of space.
No, not at all. I was like, I finally get my 8 to 10 hours of sleep every day. And then I'm spending a lot of time with my kid, bringing him down to the playground, helping him to
interesting.
do stuff, working on my blog. And yeah, I had no free time during my
Interesting.
career.
Because I don't know, do your clients struggle with suddenly a lot of space during a career break?
My clients that have gone through a layoff
Yeah.
really struggle with it. So one day you're in the office, you're doing things as usual, everything, then you get laid off. And then the next day you're like, hold on, it's 9 a.m. What do I do? So I feel like for a lot of them, that process is also a process of grief. There was a you that was at work, and then now there's a you that's not at work. What do you do? And that's very sudden. So there has to be space for that time. Take as much time as you need. But then for me, it's also about when they come to me, it's because they're asking the question, actually, I've done this for a while. How do I move forward? And then that's where we have a plan.
So the people with the planned career break, based on your experience, they don't really struggle with this sudden amount of space.
The
because they
unplanned
planned
ones,
it.
right? Because
Is
it was unplanned, they now suddenly have to plan. So during that period, that's where the big influx will hit.
Okay.
If people have gone on a planned career break and it extends for example, if they don't get a job
It's called
within their time limit,
retirement.
yeah, but they struggle sometimes with that. So they might only have had a plan for 9 months, but like the 10th month, 11th month, 12th month, that's where actually some of the questions come in.
Especially for those who maybe like,
Staying?
I plan maybe 9 months or 1 year. And then like you said earlier, I will start sending out my resume maybe in the 9th month, but instead of 3 months to get a job, it becomes 6 months. Then that's like extended, not by plan.
Yes,
Fair.
100%.
That is interesting. Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yep, now back to the show. Maybe just give a little bit of insights on if, let's say, someone ends up with an unplanned, career break. It's called retrenchment.
No, it can also be because of other reasons.
Yeah, okay.
Like maybe you need to be a caregiver.
Oh, yeah, fair.
That's an
fair.
unplanned one as well.
Unplanned, you take a break, okay? So how would you kind of advise them to go about managing this grief? Because if it's that context, it's even worse, right? it's not like you just lose your job. It's like you're gonna sacrifice your job to take care of somebody, right? And that's even worse in my view, because you are being thrown out of the whole thing into something else. So you gotta grieve, still gotta do things.
Yeah.
You know, so like, what are some advice do you have for people that end up in this kind of flux situation?
I mean, honestly, go to therapy. Like, I think go to therapy, get professional help, go and find a support group. I think you need to give yourself that space to figure out before you even get to a point when you can ask yourself, what is my next step? I think for me, it's very hard. It's impossible to give people advice during those first few weeks where people are like, I am so overwhelmed. This is something that has happened to me. It's
exactly
terrible.
Sounds like that, right? I am.
Yes.
I know what you're saying.
And I get it because it's happened to me. Like, I cried so much and it was good. But actually for me, the feeling that I had after I went through this, it was not hopefulness. It was not, oh, I'm finally at peace. I was angry. I was just straight up angry. And I was like, actually, I am angry and I'm going to do this so that this never happens to me again. And that was my point of view. But I had to get there.
So that anger turned into determination in the end.
No, I'm still angry. I'm just angry.
But fueling that energy into something. I also want to add in something. I feel that another thing that doesn't really get talked about as often is that if you're in a partnership, right, whether a relationship, you're married, or a relationship with your parents at home, okay? When the person goes on
these days relationship.
must broaden a
the
bit.
definition very broad.
Must broaden. Anyway, so like one thing I realized, and it was really my husband who taught me this. When one party goes on break, the other people around him or her can very easily fill up their time. And I was unconsciously doing that, and I didn't realize until my husband pointed out to me.
Can you be a bit more tangible on that?
Okay,
I find that very interesting.
Example,
right?
Yeah. He was on a career break because he felt overwhelmed. He just wanted some time off. He just closed lots of deals. Very chiong season. Now time
Chinese
to pull back a little bit. Yeah, it's China cuisine.
She don't like, he likes. So it's a different discussion here.
So he wanted some time to recover and, get back his energy, do some things that he never really did before when he was busy. But because he was home all day, sleeping until 3 p.m., right? And then I was like, hey, our kid has swim class. I really need to get this proposal done. Can you help to settle that? Yeah, and then like, hey, got the doctor appointment. I cannot make it. I got meeting. You free, right? Can you go? I'm like, hey, can you do this? So a lot of the things at home, I was asking for it. I was like, hey, I need to do this exchange with a customer, very urgent. Can you drive me? So a lot of that little request.
Who would have done this before? Like all these tasks?
Typically me or the helper.
Interesting.
So I was then outsourcing a lot of these to him.
So he got unwillingly offloaded because everybody thought he's free.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And then even his parents were like, oh, can you send our fourth aunt here and there and everything?
Fourth aunt, take a grab, okay? Fourth aunt, you are relax, okay?
Oh, is it fifth aunt? I can't remember.
Give me a break, okay? Whatever aunt, okay? Don't always disturb the guys to drive.
Yeah, so I think it was a very interesting realization because only after he vocalized it several months in,
that is so
then I realized
interesting.
so actually the takeaway here is that if you are on a career break, you need to really protect your time.
Yeah.
And make sure that other people know you have a plan, even if that plan is just Netflix. Yeah. Because the moment I don't protect that time, someone else going to load stuff on me and I don't get that career break.
And then my career break kena attack.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
Oh,
I think that's something interesting to take note of. Like if someone's going on a career break, really get your partner or the relationships in your life aligned. Like, hey, I'm taking this time to go and learn or improve myself in AI or go and do my masters or catch up on my 10 Korean shows. Don't bother me.
Fair. And I just want to add to that. I think having some space kind of helps in the sense of like physical space. Because a lot of times when people go on this kind of breaks, right, then, like you said, like they're at home, right, all the time, or when you're always at home, then you don't build that kind of, what do you call that? Like a barrier. Sometimes the physical barrier is quite important.
Correct.
Right. So like I have some friends who are going on career breaks, but they go out quite regularly and they go to specific locations to kind of do something, right? And I think that there's some value in doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like if my husband was in the office, I wouldn't have asked him for that.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So husbands, you go to the NLB, right? You just sit there and watch your Netflix there, right? Do what you need to do. And I think there's a lot of value in that physical barrier that sometimes is underappreciated, especially when we're in a small country. So it's quite interesting. Okay,
so we'll talk about career breaks, what to consider before going for one, how to plan and design one, and then the next one is get the other people in your life aligned.
I like that,
so
yes.
that gets protected. Now let's move on into how do you then bounce back stronger when you come back from your career break?
For me, it goes back to the question of goal setting. Know what you want and know what you want coming out of it. So as you are exiting your career break, what you got to be very aware of is that over the time of your break, things may have changed. Things may have changed, things may be different, like industry changes, economy changes, you change, your friends change. So adapt to that as you're planning your goals and then see, actually, are you able to meet your goals? And how many goals can you meet? So you might have maybe 10 goals. Can you meet 50%? Can you meet 70%? How do you know? So start moving slowly towards those goals and then look at redefining your goals, going back to check on actually, is this still a goal that I want? If you get into your first job post-career break and you're like, I really miss my Netflix time, or I cannot survive on 5 hours a night anymore, then you might need to reconfigure your goals. Maybe the goal that you wanted is no longer for you because you have changed, and leaning into that process is really important. We think of time as being very linear and very structured. They're just these blocks of time. You have to get through it. But that's not always true. Sometimes 6 months, 9 months, 3 months can be very transformational for people, especially if they're on their career break. They come back with very different goals, very different ideas, and a very different sense of the work that they're good at, that they want to do. And recognizing that and trying that is really important. So give yourself space.
I just wanted to add on that, right? But to be fair, work has a muscle to it, right? I mean, as with anything, right? To be very clear about it. So if you're out of work for a while, that means you're not like going on a career for a while, you do need to give yourself a little bit more time to kind of build that muscle back, right? At least for me, for a while, I was like, wow, there's just too much work. But I've been saying there's too much work for like 3 years, right? And every time the work stacks, but your muscles, they stack also. You find better ways, you get better at this, you can handle more things. 1 year of career break, you lose some muscles lah.
Yep.
Right? That work muscle. So don't be too quick to reevaluate the goals, right? Like you must give yourself a bit of space, to then
readjust.
Yeah, to then adjust, right? Be a bit kinder to yourself, and then from there, you in 6 months' time, you can then ask yourself, wow, this one really too much.
Which goes back to the exit strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
As you come out.
So I don't think anyone should make a decision immediately. I think when you exit your career break, give yourself at least 3 to 6 months. I think it's important to, like you said, just make sure that you're not making a hasty decision. Is it really that you can't cope with it? Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Sometimes you need to lean into it and be like, people are a lot nicer than I thought they were on my first day.
Let's talk about judgment. So we talk a lot about how to design and how to make ourselves benefit, whether it's rest or upskilling or whatever we want to get out of that career break, right? But the other person opposite us in the interviewing room, how do they feel? Because generally, I think so far in this fast-paced society, going off for career breaks is still fairly new. And not a lot of employers or recruiters recognize that, right? I've heard people talk about how like, oh yeah, I was on a 1 or 2 year break. Oh, what do you do? To be a more involved parent. And they're just like, they don't see the benefit of that. It's beneficial for the person.
Because they were never an involved
exactly.
parent.
And then, you see the wheels spinning in the recruiter's mind and you can tell like, you're judging me, right? Yeah, like why? I cannot go and take my career break. But then it already kind of like reduces their chance at so you didn't take your 2 years career break to go do a master's lah. You just want to be more involved with your kids. Okay, but then you kind of lose that edge. How can people take back control in such situations as it develops in front of them?
Yeah, I love this
Don't
question.
join the company.
Maybe the recruiter is not the company.
Okay, fair.
Sometimes they outsource.
Yeah, so this is a great question. So, I mean, look, I'm a woman, I'm Muslim, I'm a mom. I'm going to get judged no matter what I do. I could come looking like Barbie and people will still judge me 100%. This is not a thing. So what I think instead for me is more useful is looking at two things. One, what do you need out of this opportunity? For a lot of women, they have no choice. You need to work anyway. You will take whatever comes your way. And I respect that. So you have to put up with it. That's one aspect. I respect that. I respect the women that put up with it. For women that have more resources, that have a choice, the choice that you might have is actually to understand that the gap is not a gap that can be filled with logic. It cannot be filled with any skills. It cannot be filled with anything that you can say. It is a moral gap. If the person sitting opposite you does not respect you as an equal, that's a moral gap and you can't fill that. And that's why even for my nonprofit, the Codette Project, we moved away from justifying why we exist to organizations and people that wanted to partner with us to only working with people that understood the value that we bring and understood that we are equal. If you can sit opposite me and you want me to justify why minority Muslim women should be in tech, then fundamentally, we are working on two very different assumptions. You don't see me as an equal. This conversation is not going to go anywhere. You have to see me as an equal first.
A moral gap.
It's true.
For the candidate, the applicant, to recognize and be aware that it is a moral gap here, will help them get back that control so they don't have to fight so hard to justify and correct, because no matter what they do, no matter what they say, this person cannot change their mind or it'll be very hard and it's not worth it. But then I guess the next question is, what if this gatekeeper, I really need to get past this gatekeeper? Let's say the candidate identified that this is really a good job, a company that they want, this is the next step in their career that they want. Unfortunately, the first gatekeeper is an outsourced recruiter that does not represent the culture, because maybe the culture of the company, they're like pro motherhood, pro parenthood, pro work from home, but this recruiter is an external one with all that judgmental look in his eyes as he look at you and ask, why did you take a 2-year career break to
because
be a more involved parent?
Accounts are different.
Exactly. How can that candidate then cross and jump over that gatekeeper in order to get to where he wants to go to?
Look, I think especially for things like motherhood, you hear this a lot from moms that want to go back into work. You got to recognize that you're not going to win all battles. You try your best, and then that's where you double down on making sure that the benefit that you bring to the company is clear. But if you can't bridge that gap, you can't bridge that gap with that person. There are literally hundreds and thousands of jobs in Singapore. So you have to make sure that you give yourself enough chances. Maybe meet people that are in that company. See if you can get that for your next job. Maybe not this one. Look at what is your long-term plan. I think that if you were in a situation where, especially for moms, you took a 2-year break, you took care of your kid, in that 2 years, how much your child grew. Give yourself the generosity of feeling that in 2 years, you can grow as well. And you might just be looking at the next 2 years. You're in something at the moment. This is something, not what you want, but okay. But what's your next step? Just keep going. And that mentality, the ability to say that there is something better out there is something that is necessary when you're faced with an immediate now problem.
But is this mom thing really a problem still in the market today? I mean, like mom trying to re-enter the workforce, they took some time off, just want to understand, because you work with so many people, right? So
yes, absolutely. So that's why there's great organizations. Moms at Work is a great organization. They do a lot of work trying to place women into jobs. But even with Codette, even with the work that I do as a career coach, we do meet people that have this issue. It definitely still is there. I think, unfortunately, it is true that people may be asked, why did you take a break? Why is there a gap? But more and more people are recognizing that having a gap is not a bad thing. What I think people should also do is that people should prepare an answer. Like sometimes you should just recognize that someone's going to ask you, right? Just prepare an answer. Be prepared for it. It's not that they're judging you from the outset. They want to know why.
Send the recruiter this episode link.
Yeah, send. Yeah.
If you have a particularly terrible experience with a specific recruiter, write a complaint letter.
NDC.
I think that's also fair.
Yeah, talk to NDC.
Yeah, talk to the HR. Find the HR VP on LinkedIn and send them a message. If it was genuinely terrible, they discriminated against you, they brought up things like your children, your race, you being pregnant, not pregnant, your identity, send it in. It might make you feel better even if nothing happens. So I think that's also okay. But you got to make sure that it was really, really genuinely terrible.
And like that, I want to share a story. At one point, several years ago in my career, right, I was toying with the idea of leaving the industry and trying something new because I was like, young lah, right? Try while I'm still young instead of next time when I'm more scared to do things.
I second that point. I think it's a fair point because as you age out, you got more and more things. Not because you're getting old, just the risk becomes higher. So yeah.
Exactly. So I was considering, I'm toying around with that idea. But I just couldn't get past the first few gatekeepers. And this is not even career break. It's really just career transition change, right? I couldn't get past because they were asking for all these criteria. You must have a degree or education or experience in this kind of roles. I'm like, I'm literally trying to move industries I don't have. I want to get in. I want to know what it was to get in. So what I did was, I went to find, I did some stalking. I'm quite good at that.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's why I'm in the line that I'm in.
Profession.
Exactly. So I managed to find the person in that role that I wanted. The one who was exiting. And she was very gracious, very nice. She lent me an hour of her time. We met on Zoom and I was asking her how did she make that switch also, because she was same as me. She didn't have something before, right? So walking her through, and then like she offered to link me up with her manager, which is going to be my manager if I got the role. And that was very helpful for me because it made me realize that after that call, actually I didn't really want it as much as I thought I did. Because I learned so much that was not visible from the job description. And I realized myself that, actually the learning curve, as much as I want to learn, but learning curve is a bit too much. At that time, I just had my first kid. Yeah, so I think a bit hard for me to commit to this learning curve at this point in time. So I didn't. But it was nice because I couldn't get past the recruiters, right? Those who judge and like, you must have this experience. I tried to find another way in by getting to the manager. Actually, I was lucky the one exiting and she was going to hook me up. And then and that was like a different option for those who cannot get past the recruiters. But I like what you also gave the other idea of maybe then not this role at this point in time. Getting to know that manager or the person in charge of that hiring through other means.
So that's networking. So that's why I think for me, the networking component is such an important factor in the job search, because that's 100% just networking. That's your network. That's how you know whether this is a fit for you or not. So I feel like that is key. And that's what helps people get past the gatekeepers or get into a different career. 100%, I agree. I think one aspect of that as well is actually just recognizing that, like, we know that up to 70% of jobs in the US are filled before they're listed publicly on LinkedIn. And we don't have the statistics for Singapore, but we can assume that perhaps, similar, maybe 50%. So that's filled before it goes to listing. So what that means is that if you don't network, if you don't talk to people, you're never going to get that job. It's been filled.
That actually is true. In my line of work, right? I work a lot with HRs and they often tell me they already have the person in mind, but because it's the process.
They have to go through it.
Yeah, they need to go and leave it up there for X number of days. But actually, it's not really an open job. So if you're getting a lot of rejections or you're not getting called back, maybe that's also the reason. It's not you.
Yeah, and I had friends who got jobs created for them. Right, so it is a possible thing. Like if you're very good at what you do and you really like the company, somehow manage to talk to the management through whatever networking methods that you've gotten. They create jobs for you, right? Because they just want you on the team. So there is that possibility.
One last thing I want to talk about before we conclude is how can the candidate or the person who is coming back from the career break and wants to rejoin the workforce, they'll go through a lot of that rejections, right? How can they make sure that their will doesn't get broken during this period? So first month, very excited. Second month, no, but I know my value. It's okay, I'll keep going. Third month, maybe really something wrong with me. Fourth month, shit, am I the problem? Fifth month, maybe I'm just not good enough. It just goes down that negative spiral. Yeah. How can they keep themselves strong? Because like what we talk about, sometimes it's really not them, right? The job is not really open. It looks like it is. So it's not that you're not being called back because you're not good enough. It wasn't even there for you in the first place. How can one manage themselves to go through this process?
Yeah, from your view.
Well, honestly, look, so after I did my MBA, I had like 6-7 months. Also, it was pre-recession, not a great time, but
this one is sway one.
It's
Cannot
okay.
plan. Yeah.
But I was like, okay, great. Like I had more than 300 applications that were all rejections. They were all rejections, more than 300. I want to be very honest, but it's not great, but it helped me to stay busy, this was when I founded the Codette Project. So it helped me to have a project. Because if it was hard for me at that time with all my skills, with, like my degree and all the resources I had, it's so much harder for other people. And I didn't want it to be hard for anyone else. So that was super useful for me. But lean into it. After like rejection number 200, you're like, great. Okay,
start something of our own.
If it's your first rejection, that's terrible. But 200, like you don't have that much energy to be like, oh, I feel so bad. You're like, okay, fine. Like, what else do I do? And it's also a numbers game. People should not assume that your ROI is going to be like, you're going to get 1 acceptance out of your first 10. Do 100. And then let's see what your numbers are. I think you need that. It's just statistics.
Nice.
I think it also depends on the person's job history, right? To me, 300 is shocking because I am in a bit of a privilege lah. My first job was literally one application.
Your industry only got 100
I got
people.
in already. Yeah, exactly. And then now I'm in an industry where it's very hard to find skilled people. Correct. So it's very easy. I don't even need to apply anything. I just it's email or it's all through network, right? But like I can imagine for people who have this, right?
Yeah.
Like they are not used to, especially if they're high flyers. Everything has been very smooth. Suddenly they're back in the scene. They don't even like 10. It might be 10 rejections might be normal for someone else, but 10 is not normal in their world. How can they manage that?
So I have fresh grads or people that are first jobbers that face that. And 10 applications to 10 great universities, they get like maybe scholarships. They've done really well in school, but they leave and then they're like, oh no, my first job is so competitive. It is really stressful. It's for them to have honest conversations with other people and sometimes myself to be actually, this is really normal for you to feel. Because unfortunately, what a lot of them feel is that this is only happening to me. My friends are all doing great. Everyone's an investment banker. Like everyone is doing so well. Like, is it just me? Is there something wrong with me? And it's not. It's actually very normal. It's okay. It just means like you got to have a plan. You got to take the next step. You have to do this. We've kind of put ourselves in a situation, right, where everyone thinks that the problems are individual. Like every time something bad happens, it's only me. We don't have the community sense. We don't have the village. We don't have the environment around us to actually be like, how many people are facing this? It is normal. This is the way you get through this. That's what I want to build.
That's a good shout out. Okay, but what if everyone have and they're really the problem?
No point.
Their sample.
It's okay. I think we can.
Everyone too already. How can they then protect and maintain, not have their will broken by all the repeated rejections?
I don't know. To me, I think that there is always a place for everyone. It might just not be where you think it is, but there is a place for you. Like everyone really deserves to be happy. They deserve to have a career that is fulfilling to them. They deserve to lead good lives. But the path to that is very individual. And that's where, you don't just have generic advice. You have specific advice for specific people at a specific time. And you give them what they need. And that is also what I think is the value in a community or a village that can value you as a person. So I think it's a balance of both. I think no one should be in a situation and be like, I am the worst person ever. This is the worst thing ever. Like, that's not true.
Okay, fair. Maybe I just want to ask one last question to close this thing, right? So for people that are kind of still on the fence on whether they want to be on a career break, like they're listening to this to try to evaluate whether they need to go on a career break or should they take that career break, right? Do you have any last things you want to share with them such that it will get them over the line?
If you want to know whether you should be on a career break or not, don't. I think that's clear because that is a decision that you should make once you're confident and once you've planned for it. I think if you're still questioning, then don't. But sit down and ask yourself why you're not certain. That is helpful. If it's something practical, like you can't afford it, then figure out that part. If it's like, actually there are these parts of the job you still like, then that's okay. Like you figure out that part. But asking yourself the question is more important. And if you're not sure, don't do it.
And you had one line earlier on offset also. We want to bring that on set, right? For people who are already on a career break, mothers, for example, and they want to get back, but then they are scared that people are going to say, oh, you've been, out of the industry for too long, you're outdated. What can they do to overcome their own fear?
For me, fear is defeated by action. So when you have a plan, when you have action, the fear is just a feeling. You have the process, you go through the fear, and you are no longer afraid.
I love it.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you. So we hope you guys found this episode on career breaks useful. It's definitely something that has been, bubbling up.
People are talking about it, and I see a lot of seniors all going on career breaks. So I'm trying to get a bunch of them in studio, so that's a different thing. Yeah.
So if you had this consideration, not sure what you should be thinking about, we hope this helped you. And to end off, Nurul, if they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Sure, you can find me on socials. It's nuruljihadah.com for my career coaching. And I'm on Instagram as well, as is everybody else. So feel free.
I love how your Instagram not on Facebook anymore.
I am on Facebook. It's just, Gen Zs, you're all not on there, I know.
Yeah.
No one beyond the age of 40, sorry.
Yeah. Nice.
All
Thank
right,
you.
and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.